All right, today these are the things that you're going to need in class. So go ahead and pull out the things that you see here on the screen, and then I want you to put your book and your notebook and everything else that you have underneath your desk. Make sure your phones are in the pocket in the back of the room. Today we're going to be talking about 4.5, comparing and ordering fractions. I want you to pull out your red pen and go ahead and pause the video. I want you to write down this statement up there at the very top of your notes. Okay, so the statement you just wrote down is, before comparing or ordering fractions, you must find a common denominator. So if you do not have a common denominator, you are not going to be able to do the first two examples of what we're going to be talking about today. So make sure you always find a common denominator. Number 1 tells us to copy and complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equal to. So, like I just told you, before you can do anything else, you must find a common denominator. So what we're doing is, you see 7/10 and 3/4. If you look, the denominator here is 10 and the denominator here is 4. Those are not common because they are not the same exact denominator. So what you need to find is something called the least common denominator. You want to find the smallest number that both of those can go into. So what you should always do is start with the larger denominator. What's the larger denominator you see there? 10, okay? So let's look at a 10. Can a 4 go into a 10 evenly, yes or no? No, it cannot, okay? So then you've got to go to the next multiple of a 10. What's the next multiple after 10? It would be a 20, okay? Can a 4 go into a 20? Yes, it can. So that's what we're going to be doing now, is we are going to be making these turn into equivalent fractions. So we know the denominator for both of them is going to be a 20. What you're going to do is do this exactly right now on your notes, just like I'm doing it on here. We've got to figure out how we get from a 10 to a 20. Do you have to multiply or divide to get from a 10 to a 20? Okay, you've got to multiply. What number do you multiply to get from a 10 to a 20? Times 2. Remember our fairness rule. If I multiply the bottom by 2, I have to multiply the top by 2, okay? So then when I do that, 10 times 2, down here we know, equals 20. And now this will become our numerator. 7 times 2 equals what? 14. Now we got to do the same exact thing to over here. But I'm not going to be multiplying by 2, because if you look, 4 times 2 would have been 8, and that's not what that is. How do I get from a 4 to a 20? Do I have to multiply or divide? You've got to multiply, and what are we going to multiply by? Times 5, all right? So we've got 4 times 5. Remember, whatever I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top. So right here, 4 times 5 equals 20, and now 3 times 5 equals what? 15, okay? So I've got 14 twentieths and 15 twentieths. Which one is smaller? This one right here is smaller, so my sign should read 14 twentieths is less than 15 twentieths. And then what you have to do is just put that back into our original problem and go ahead and box in your answer. So 7/10 is less than 3/4. Let's go ahead and do example B. It's going to be done exactly like we just did example A. 5/8 and 7/12. We're trying to figure out whether they're equal to each other or one of them's greater or one of them's less than. So the first thing you got to do is find a common denominator, a least common denominator, an LCD. So we're going to start with the biggest denominator, which is a 12. Can an 8 go into a 12 evenly? No, it cannot. So I've got to go to my next multiple of a 12. What's the next multiple of a 12? 24. All right. Can an 8 go into a 24 evenly? Yes, it can. So now I know my common denominator is going to be a 24 for both of these. Remember, before you do anything else, you have to find a common denominator. So now you've just got to figure out how to get from an 8 to a 24. What number do you multiply to get by an 8 to a 24? You multiply times 3. Remember, I want to see your work shown, so make sure you're putting this in your notes also. Times 3 on top, times 3 on bottom. And what does that fraction turn into? 15 24ths. So now let's go ahead. This 12, we've got to turn it into a 24. 12 times what number equals 24? Times 2. All right, if I multiply by 2 on the bottom, I've got to multiply by 2 on the top, which means my new fraction now is what? 14/24. So what should go into the blank? Greater than, less than, or equal to? If you said greater than, you are correct, because 15/24 is greater than 14/24. So then you're simply going to stick that up there in your original fraction, and we know 5/8 is greater than 7/12. I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I would like you guys to try to do problem C on your own. All right, hopefully you tried it on your own. If you did, you would notice that 12 is the greater denominator and both numbers can fit into a 12. So whenever you have this, I'm just going to bring that 6 right down because I didn't have to multiply by anything. I mean, I guess you could say we multiplied times 1 on top and times 1 on bottom. That's really not necessary to show me that kind of work though, so you don't need to do that. Now, I do need to figure out that I had to multiply times 2 to get down there to the 12. Whatever I do to the top, I also have to do to the bottom. And we know that we've got 6/12 and 6/12, which obviously equals each other. So 6/12 is the same thing or equal to 3/6. For our next example today, it asks us to order the fractions from least to greatest. So I want us just to look at these different fractions right here, and I'm wondering, because 1 is the smallest one there, can we just automatically say that 1/6 is smaller than all the rest of them? No, we can't, because if you remember from the very, very beginning in our notes in red, before you do anything else, what does it tell us we have to find? You must find a common denominator. So let's go ahead and look at all of these numbers right here. As I look, I can see a 3, 8, 6, and 4. Which one is the biggest denominator of those 4 right there? An 8, okay? So let's just see. Can all of these numbers go into an 8? Can a 3 evenly go into that 8? No, it cannot, all right? So I know 8 is not the answer. Then I'm going to just go ahead and go by multiples of 8. We know 8 isn't it. What is the next multiple of an 8? It would be a 16, okay? Can a 3 go into a 16 evenly? No, it cannot. So what's my next multiple of 8? You go 8, 16, what's the next one? 24, okay? Can a 3 go into a 24? Yes. Can an 8 go into a 24? Yes. Can a 6? Yes, it can. And a 4 also can. So I know that a 24 is my least common denominator, so that's the number that I've got to have. So we're going to be doing this exactly like we just did before, but this time I've got 4 different fractions that I'm dealing with. So I'm going to give each of them the same denominator. This is the least common denominator. So now what we need to do is make equivalent fractions. We have started right up here with 2/3. I have to figure out how I get that and turn it into something 24ths. So right here, 3 times what number equals 24? Times 8. Now remember, if I multiply the bottom by 8, I also have to multiply the top by 8. So what is 2 times 8? 16. So that tells me that 2/3 is the same thing as 16/24. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing. This one needs to turn into something 24ths. How do I get from an 8 to a 24? I multiply times 3. If I multiply the bottom times 3, I've got to multiply the top times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, we're going to continue to do this. 6 times what number equals 24? Times 4. Whatever I do to the bottom, I've got to do to the top. What's 1 times 4? The answer is 4. Finally, my last one, 4 times what number equals 24? Times 6. What you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top. What's 3 times 6? 18. Okay? Now, I am not finished yet. All I did was I came up with equivalent fractions. But tonight on your homework, or in class, you'll get some time to do it. You have to show me work just like this. You must show me. So please make sure in your notes that you've copied down everything that I have on my screen so far. Okay, so now that we have equivalent fractions, I'm not finished yet. My instructions told me to order the fractions from least to greatest. But now you can look and see which numerator is the smallest because all of the denominators are a 24. So of the numerators, which one is the tiniest numerator? The 4/24 is the tiniest, okay? So the only thing is you cannot just rewrite 4/24. What you want to do is rewrite it in its original form. So 4/24 we learned is the same thing as 1/6. So what I'm going to do when I rewrite it down here at the bottom, put it directly underneath that first fraction. I'm going to write 1/6, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cross this out, cross this one out because I've used it up. What's the next tiniest fraction? Remember, once again, look at these ones where we have the common denominator. The next numerator that's the tiniest is 9/24, but am I going to write it as 9/24? No, what would it be? 3/8, okay? So stick that directly underneath that second one, 3/8. What's the next tiniest one? 16/24, which is the same thing as 2/3. And then finally, my biggest one is 18/24, which was known as 3/4. So now you have put these in order from least to greatest, and that is your final answer. So a couple things to remember. Just make sure right here you are showing me your work of what you're multiplying by after you get that common denominator, and then just remember as you write it that you want to rewrite it again as the original fraction that the problem had given to you. I want you guys to go ahead, pause the video, and I want you to try to find the common denominator out of these 4 fractions and try to put them in order from least to greatest exactly like you did problem A. Okay, hopefully you got a chance to look at it. If you look right here, and I hope that you figured this out, 12 is the largest denominator. So then you want to see if a 2 can go into a 12, which it can, a 6, which it can, and a 4, which it can. So I actually don't even have to find multiples of 12 because I know my least common denominator is going to be a 12. Now, some of you might have found something a little bit bigger like 24. And honestly, if you did that, that would be fine too. I would prefer you to find the tiniest one, but if you did it with a 24, you can still get the correct answer. The main thing is I want to make sure you're showing me work. To get from a 2 down here to a 12, you had to multiply by 6. Make sure you're fair and you do it on top and on bottom. So your new answer would be 6/12, which just means 1/2 is the same thing as 6/12. Next up, to get from a 12 to a 12, I don't have to do anything, or I multiply by 1. So then the top, you're going to multiply by 1, so it will stay the same, 3/12. To get from a 6 to a 12, I have to multiply by the number 2. Remember to be fair, do it on top and on bottom. 2/12 is the equivalent fraction, and from here, to get from 4 down to a 12, I have to multiply by the number what? Times 3, okay? So do it on top and on bottom. Your equivalent fraction now is 9/12. So now that all of my denominators are exactly the same, I can more easily compare and put them in order from least to greatest. The tiniest is obviously 2/12. Do I keep it as 2/12? No, you have to rewrite it as its original form, which is 1/6. Once again, put it directly underneath. You want to try to keep your work nice and neat as possible. Next up, we know that 3/12 is the tiniest, which was actually its original form. And then my next one is 6/12 or 1/2. And finally, 9/12 or 3/4. Then go ahead and box that in. All right, so that is how you are going to put fractions in order from least to greatest. Next up, I want you to flip your paper to the back. I want you to take about 5 minutes to try to find the GCF and the LCM of the numbers by using prime factorization. So this is a review. You guys should remember how to do it. Just remember, prime factorization is upside down division. Okay, I hope you have had a couple minutes to be able to try to do this on your own. 14, you want to divide it by the smallest prime number, which is a 2, and then 7 is prime, so I know I'm finished. With a 21, you wanted to divide it by a 3, and 3 times 7 equals 21. Now, hopefully, you put them in order from least to greatest, and then what you want to do is go ahead and circle the pairs. My tiniest pair that I have there is number 7. So as you remember, GCF, all you have to do, the 2 become 1, and that proves to me that my greatest common factor is 7. If you did not get that, please erase your work, what you have, and fix it. Go ahead and make your notes look exactly like mine. Make sure you've circled that pair also. Remember, factors fit into numbers, okay? So you can see a 7 does fit into a 21, and a 7 does fit into a 14, okay? So of all the factors that fit into a 14 and a 21, 7 is the very biggest one. Now, it didn't ask me just to find the GCF, it also said to find the LCM. So we're going to find the least common multiple, and we're going to just use those same numbers once again. So I've got 14, the two factors were 2 and 7. 21, the two factors were 3 and 7. Same thing, once again, you want to go ahead and circle the pairs, and the 2 become 1. There is one difference between a GCF and an LCM. With one word, can you guys say it out loud? What is the difference between GCF and LCM? Hopefully a few of you guys said leftovers. I know you're probably so sad that I'm not there to say it with you, but just remember you don't want to leave the leftovers out. So we're going to put them in order from least to greatest. The teeniest one is a 2. You bring that down. The next one is a 3, and then I've already brought down my 7. So 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 times 7 is 42. Hopefully you guys got that, but then make sure you label it LCM equals 42. Go ahead and box that in. All right, I've got one last and final slide for us today. Once again, still a review. I want you to tell whether the number is prime or composite and explain your answer. So go ahead and pause the video, and I want you guys to try to do these two, both A and B, on your own. Okay, so here we go. Number 27. What do you guys think? Prime or composite? It is composite. Remember, composite means a little bit more complicated, okay? Be careful. Some of you are trying to write the word complicated right there. The word is composite. Yes, it is complicated, but make sure you write the word composite. Why is that composite? What other than 1 in itself equals 27? 3 times 9. Very good job, okay? So let's go on to the next one, 13. The only thing that can go into 13 is 1 in itself. So remember, it is prime, it's prim and proper. Nothing else fits into it, just like a king and a queen, all right? So you want to make sure your example is 1 times 13. Please do not give me a bunch of extra words that say because 1 and 13 are the only factors in it. If you simply write this right here, that's all I need to know, and that proves to me that that's prime because there's nothing else that could be multiplied together that will give you a 13, okay? So those are our last 2 review problems from today. I want you guys to go ahead and pull out that other piece of paper that you should have on your desk already. This is your homework for tonight, okay? So don't forget, you guys need to label your name, your date, the assignment up there, and your number and your class. So be careful. The main thing here that I want you to note, 12 through 18 all, okay? So you're going to be doing number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and then you'll have 21, 41, and 42. Once again, just 10 problems like normal, so you're going to have the rest of the class to work on this assignment, all right? So make sure you do a great job, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good day. Bye.